Hello again, my dear friends, and welcome to the conversation. I'm Ryan Campbell, your host. I'm joined today by a very special guest, my friend Bill Pooley. You are the sheriff for Tuolumne County. Welcome to the show, and glad you're here.
Hey, thank you for having me. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, I've been wanting to talk to you for a while because
Uh-huh.
you're the main guy, the main law enforcement official in Tuolumne County. So a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, and you've had a lot of experience in the county. Looking at what the role of a sheriff is, how do you see that in a county like Tuolumne, where it's still fairly rural, smaller population? What is it like being a rural county sheriff?
First off, I'm blessed to work in a county that has so much support for law enforcement. You know, I'm part of the State Sheriff's Association. All 58 sheriffs get in a room and they talk about issues they have going on. And the one thing I've realized, we're really blessed in this county. I have such fantastic support from the community, from the board. Just really support law enforcement. I hear horror stories of some of the more urban counties, the lack of support that they have for the sheriff's offices. I can't imagine having been sheriff anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I would have done it, to be quite honest.
Yeah. And so how long have you been sheriff for Tuolumne County?
I've been sheriff for 5.5 years. Okay. Prior to that, I started with Jim Mealy, my predecessor, in 2013. So I did 5.5, 6 years for him as his undersheriff, and then when he retired, he asked that I be appointed for the remainder of his term, and then I was fortunate enough, nobody ran against me for the first go-round.
Yeah. Have you always had an interest in law enforcement as a career, and did you ever see yourself being the sheriff?
Never saw myself being sheriff, honestly. I do have pictures of me at 3 years old. My mom had made me a police uniform. It's all I've ever wanted to do. My mom joked that, hey, I couldn't get you out of that uniform. You wore it until the sleeves were up to your elbows, and I apparently that's all I've ever wanted to do. It's been a wonderful career. I've got to do so many great and wonderful things throughout my career. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, and you've served in a number of different areas. You probably spent most of your time in Tuolumne County, right?
Most of my time was actually spent in Stanislaus County. Mm-hmm. So I started out at Sonora Police Department. I did 2.5 years there.
So your first law enforcement job was Sonora PD?
Sonora PD, yeah. And part of that was my family was from here. We always came up here, knew the area fairly well. My grandfather had a couple ranches up here, and so it was kind of second home, if you will.
Yeah.
And then after that, I did a short stint with Tuolumne County as a reserve, and then went back to Sonora PD for a very short stint, and then I went to Stanislaus County. I did 18.5 years there, basically worked narcotics for 10 years. One of my favorite jokes is I was able to work both street-level narcotics and we did prostitution, and we did things like that. So, hopefully I'm the only person in this room that's ever bought drugs, prostitutes, and things like that. It was got to do all the...
I can see that, yes.
It's one of my favorite jokes.
Yeah.
But then from there, I went on to work in a major narcotics group, and we did meth labs all up and down the state. It was a lot of fun at the time. There was a lot of resources being thrown at methamphetamine. It was the drug of the state, essentially. Most methamphetamine in the United States was manufactured in the Central Valley. Proud to say our work, not just my work, but all of our work and the legislative bodies, outlying precursor chemicals and things like that, we've actually driven methamphetamine labs out of California. Mm-hmm. Most of it's now being manufactured in Mexico and then smuggled up.
Yeah, and I remember that time very vividly where, Tuolumne County and some of the Central Sierra counties were getting a not very good reputation.
Mm-hmm.
when it came to meth labs. You know, every month or so you'd hear about an explosion
Yep.
out in the woods in a trailer somewhere, and it was because somebody was mixing chemicals, didn't know what they were doing, and
We would find them in backpacks. As a matter of fact, the first methamphetamine lab that I ever came across, I was working for Sonora Police Department, and a vehicle came off of Beretta Street onto Mono, ended up doing a traffic stop on it, and found a methamphetamine lab in a backpack with all the chemicals and things like that. That was my first one.
wow.
Yeah, so that was back in early 90s.
Yeah. Well, how have things kind of changed over time? I mean, you've seen a broad spectrum of crime and the impacts that has on rural communities. What's different now compared to when you started?
The deputies now, compared to when I started, have to do so much more to make a case.
What do you mean?
There's, most of the time now we have body cameras. There's a higher expectation for how they process evidence. Let's throw cell phones in. Now, when you look at a cell phone, it's not just looking at who have you called. It's looking at what social media are you on, going through every single one of those digital accounts. It takes a lot of work, a lot of time, and a lot of energy to make cases. And there's so much evidence to be gathered. These young kids just have, I think, a much more complex job than I did.
Yeah.
And we've got fantastic deputies that do really good work in this county. I'll put them up against any county in this state.
Yeah. And is it that there is a lot more evidence out there to make cases, or that courts are requiring more evidence to make a conviction?
Yeah, I think over the last 10 years, law enforcement has been called on the carpet on a lot of things, mostly nationally, and there's just a higher expectation. It's harder to make a case. It used to be that if a deputy came in and testified in court, that was taken as gold. Now I think there's more skepticism, and I think you have to have other evidence to corroborate that. But it's not just the evidence portion. How we report domestic violence, and now if we do a traffic stop, there's a whole section, it's called RIPA, that we have to go in and fill out data. It's just those extra steps that deputies now have to take. It's making sure that we have our TROs done. It's making sure we, notify them of all the domestic violence laws and contacting victim witness and things like that. It's just a much more all-around complex job than it ever used to be.
What you've seen a lot in this county. You're aware of things that probably most people aren't aware of. What are some of the things that keep you up at night?
Oh boy, in the summer, it's fire for sure. It's our ability to be able to get out, notify folks, and make sure that we can get everybody out of a dangerous area as quickly as possible.
And a lot of people might not know that in an emergency like a fire, it's not the fire department, it's the sheriff that makes the determination whether or not there's going to be an evacuation.
Well,
so what's that responsibility?
It's not
like?
just the sheriff. We work really well with our fire partners to determine, hey, they'll tell us, hey, the fire is going to go this direction, the winds are doing this, we have X amount of resources to put the fire out. But once we make that decision together, it is up to the sheriff's office or law enforcement to make the evacuation notices. It's the fire guys' jobs to go do and put out the fires. So where the decision to evacuate and what areas to evacuate, that's made collaboratively. But when it comes down to boots on the ground, that's us. And very well, we've been short deputies for several years now, and I think that was always my biggest fear, is if we have a bad fire, how are we going to have enough deputies to evacuate people? That in the summertime, man, if the wind starts kicking up and I hear those planes kicking off, I'm on my phone, I'm checking where's the fire, what's going on. That was always one thing that always kept me up at night.
Yeah. How do you keep community members informed when you're looking at an emergency like that?
Well, part of it is we put out information obviously through social media. We put it out on the radio stations.
And you have a really active Facebook page. It's probably one of, if not the most liked Facebook page.
I think it's probably the most, yeah. But we've got a crew of people that work on that constantly for us. It takes a lot of time and energy, and they do a great job. But there's, the emergency notification systems, our reverse 911 system. We have all those things, but really the only thing that guarantees people will get out safely is if a deputy comes and knocks on your door and tells you you need to go. Then we know we have made contact with you, and we can go on to the next one. I hate to say it, when you put out all the information you can, you're not communicating if the other side's not listening or isn't in a position to listen. So really the only way we can guarantee it is boots on the ground, having the deputy go knock on the door, you need to leave immediately.
I wanted to ask you about, so one of the big, well, I can ask you this, what do you think your biggest achievements are as sheriff? And I'm assuming one of those would be the opening the new jail.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to ask you about that. What was the process to get there? And now that it's open, how's it working out?
The jail's working great. It does have its little issues that, as any new building would have. We had an issue with hot water for a while. We've had an issue with heat or air conditioning. All the little things that need to get ironed out. Excuse me. Obviously, that was a great achievement. The process had started before I became undersheriff. I had a little bit of expertise coming from Stanislaus County where they had already opened a couple jails and built new jails. My father-in-law was the captain down there in charge of their custody division, so having him at Sunday dinners and being able to pick his brain was really great. We went in and we brought a reserve deputy. We actually hired one of the Stanislaus guys as a reserve deputy here, paid him as a deputy to help us write the grant. And I think that was instrumental because he'd already written 2 grants that had been successful. And then, of course, Jim Mealy did a great job of selling it to the State Board of Community Corrections. And then after that, I never thought in a million years I would be picking tile colors and carpet colors for a jail. But it was a lot of fun. It was a great process. We had a great team. It is. I'm very proud of that. Yeah. A lot of the things that we've done over the years are little things. You and I were talking earlier, computers in the car. When I came here as the undersheriff, we didn't have computers in the car. And to me, having always worked with computers in the car, except for my brief time in Stanislaus County, I couldn't even fathom how they got along. I mean, they give you so much information. You have it at your fingertips.
And we're not talking decades ago. We're talking just a couple of years ago.
2013. Yeah, we had no computers in the cars.
There were no computers in squad cars in Tuolumne County.
They'd probably been in law enforcement. Computers have been in cars for at least 20 years, late 80s. And part of it is we have the mountains, we have the valleys, we have all these areas that you didn't have proper lines of communication. But as technology got better, they ended up having air cards in the computers, and we did a test, and we were able to find that we covered 80-some-odd% of the county, and we got computers in the car. It was great. And I guarantee if you ask these deputies today, we're going to take these computers out of the car, they would not be happy. It just has so much information. Yeah.
And do you think, speaking of that technology, we added body cameras recently for deputies, which is, becoming pretty much universal. I don't know of any law enforcement agencies that don't have them anymore. There are probably a few, but it's pretty commonplace.
I think that we're probably one of the last agencies to get them.
Yeah.
We were definitely on that trend. They're very expensive. The actual cameras themselves aren't that expensive, but storing the data, the video, you have to keep it for 13 months. The information, it just cost a lot of money to do. We did come to the board. I think it's an expectation now in the public that you have those. And let's be real. We both have probably cell phones in our pocket. The guys out here have cell phones in there. There's 4 cameras probably in this little building. You're always being recorded. So why not be able to tell the complete story truthfully, as opposed to little snippets that folks will put out on social media to
Right.
make you look bad?
And that's the thing I remember when body cameras became pretty widespread, is that there was some resistance among law enforcement deputies and police officers to do that. But then over time they realized that more often than not, the body camera evidence corroborated what the deputy was saying more so than the person that would say, "Oh, they beat me up. They were
Yep.
infringing on my rights," and then they go and watch the video, and it turns out that the deputy did everything they were supposed to by the book.
We've had cases where people come in and complain, and the deputy called me no good so-and-so. And, okay, well, let's sit down and look at the video. And the video shows it's just the opposite. It's the citizen being abusive towards the deputy, and the deputy's being very professional. They hold us accountable, and they help us keep the public accountable as well. I think if we also monitor them temporarily or periodically. How did this call go? Is there a training? How can we get better?
Yeah.
It's not discipline for the deputy, but hey, let's examine ourselves. How can we be better?
Yeah.
And by being able to go over these calls and watching what happened, here's how you could have said this to make this better. So we're always trying to improve in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big deal. We were way behind. Technology is a great thing. There's so much of it coming out every year. There's new stuff coming out. We're getting ready to roll out online reporting, which is fantastic for folks that don't live near Sonora. Let's say you have an item that's stolen, it's valuable, and you want to report it to your insurance. There's no suspects. It's you wake up and something's taken out of your garage, say a bicycle. To get the insurance to cover it, you have to have a police report. Well, they can just get online and make the police report now. They don't have to drive from Groveland down here to do that. So we're in the process of rolling that out. We've got a couple of things we're ironing out, but looks like the system's going to work.
That's
It's
great.
going to be a positive thing.
Now, one of the things, kind of going back to the jail a little bit, one of the reasons why our county was prompted to look at building a new jail was AB 109 realignment, which a lot of people are aware of, but probably many aren't. But certainly in law enforcement, everyone's aware of it. It's broadly speaking, it's sort of a shifting of some of the responsibility for housing inmates from state prison system to county jail system. And so it put a lot more pressure on county sheriffs, counties to provide, to be able to house criminals.
Right, and it wasn't just that we had to house them. It's you also have to now provide services for them. You have to be able to provide programming, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, some sort of education program. And in our previous jail, which was so small and so outdated, very linear in nature, you couldn't provide those services. If you did, they were so small. Now we've got classrooms. We have inmates who are graduating high school, not GEDs. They're getting their diplomas. We have a GED program as well. They can take advanced college courses. We can do behavioral therapy with them. Our job is to not warehouse people, but to make them better. And that shift really came with realignment. The whole philosophy around how we house and how we deal with inmates, it's changed. It's night and day. And it's for the better.
And it's a different kind of inmate, though, isn't it? I mean, it used to be the good old days was the county jail was the drunk tank. It was somebody is getting drunk, falls down in the street, or gets into a fight, or gets in an argument with somebody, and you wind up in jail, and you stay there till you sleep it off, and then.
So traditionally, county jails.
But that's not really the case anymore.
No, not at all. So traditionally, county jails were for misdemeanors. So the longest time frame you could stay as a misdemeanor was a year. So you would have somebody there a year. If you were convicted of a felony, you went off to state prison, much larger. They can house them. They had the facilities to do so. realignment changed that. Now we're housing felons, more complex criminals, more violent criminals, much more dangerous criminals, dangerous to, not only to other inmates but to staff. There's a more complex classification now we have to do. It's just, it's a more sophisticated inmate that we're dealing with at a county level, for sure.
What is it like working within the confines of state regulations? Because I know, speaking from county perspective, sometimes we're a little bit forgotten or misunderstood in rural communities and what our needs are versus the broad big picture of what is coming down from the state level.
I think you have, and I'm only going to compare Tuolumne County. We tend to feel like, hey, we know what's best for us. You have folks at the state legislature and our governor who may have never even been in our county, never set foot in our county, trying to tell us, hey, you need to do business this way. And first off, I think that's offensive because I think locally our community knows what's best for them. And I think that the state continually tries to do this broad brush, hey, this is great for everybody. It may be great for Bay Area cities and things like that, counties, but it may not be good for us. I don't think that they consider what rural counties have to deal with or don't have the resources to deal with certain things when they make these broad brushes. And it's very difficult for small counties to keep up. If we're going to talk about it, I'll say it. I think state legislature and the governor are constantly trying to erode the authority of the sheriff. Last year they tried to pass a law that says the board with 4/5 vote can remove a sheriff. In my mind, the people have elected me. What gives you, as 4 individuals, the right to overturn everything that the community has said? This community spoken. They've elected a sheriff, be it me or whom else. How then do you give the power to 4 people to remove somebody from an elected office? They're constantly trying to. Luckily, that didn't pass. I think it'll probably be back this year. They're constantly trying to erode the authority of the sheriff. They moved our election cycle from the off year to a presidential year, and they did that specifically because more urban folks tend to vote, and it's let's face it, it's a more liberal voting in the state of California. So they're constantly trying to change that thing, our power, or take our power away. I think they're trying to do it to DA's offices as well. People need to pay attention to that because they're constantly trying to do those things. And let's face it, they are decriminalizing so much stuff that affects our quality of life.
Yeah.
I don't think they understand what they're doing.
And do you think, I almost feel like we have to be at the bottom. Things are a pendulum. They swing back and forth. We have periods of time where we're very hard on crime. You think about the 90s when you had some of these really high profile crimes and you had 3 strikes laws and these types of things. And then you saw incarceration rates go up. And then now people later on realized that we probably went a little bit too far in some of these convictions for small crimes. And so the pendulum kind of swung back the other way. Now we're just, everybody sees the YouTube videos and the TikToks of people running into stores with armfuls of goods and then running out. And I don't know that we've had anything that severe in our community, but we've certainly had an uptick in petty crime because of the results
absolutely.
of some of these.
I
these
guarantee you, there's.
Do you think things are going to swing back the other direction?
Today, go to any of the major stores in our county. Somebody is stealing something right now. Not this minute, but today. And I've been at the store with my grandson and see somebody just walk out the door with a cart full of stuff. And you're like, hey, they're stealing, and they don't do anything about it. There's no consequences. Of course, law enforcement can do stuff, but there's a lack of consequence, and you're right. We have swung too far. I think there has to be a good balance of having some sort of consequence. If you talk about the 90s, a lot of people were just warehoused that did nothing but create more criminals. I think we're in a position now that if we have some sort of consequence, we can get you in a custody setting, we can change your behavior. We can help you be better. But if you never come into this setting, we never get that opportunity.
And that really makes me think about, and again, this is the prison system, but for decades, we had the baseline inmate fire crew based here in Tuolumne County. And, I've talked to many inmates who've been through that program. I was very familiar with the work they did and how it operated. And what was so phenomenal about it is that when those inmate crews were out in the community doing their work, people were high-fiving them. They were saying, thank you so much, because yes, they were there because they screwed up. They made a mistake and they're paying their debt to society. But while they were working on the job, they weren't an inmate, they were a firefighter, and they were helping that community.
And it gives them, I think people inherently need a sense of value. I need to feel like I've contributed. I need to feel good about myself. And working does that. I mean, it really does. We had the inmate crew down. It's the black and white house right across the street from the Jimtown Frosty. It was boarded up. Homeless were living in there. They went in, they cleaned it up. And a community member came by, went over to the Frosty, and bought the entire inmate crew hamburgers and fries and sodas. Because, hey, you're doing something valuable for our community. And the pride that they felt was amazing.
Is that what you want to see it kind of going into the future, is more kind of work-related programs for inmates?
We could do so much with an inmate work crew. We're one of 9 counties that are allowed to have, we can actually contract our inmates out. We can pay our inmates so that they have some money when they get out. When the program was up and running before COVID hit, we were getting folks certified in chainsaw use. We're giving them safety certificates. We're calling and helping them get jobs. That's what's going to change an inmate, is ability to have a job, be a contributing member of society, and feel great about themselves. That's what's going to change folks.
I wanted to ask you, you made an announcement that you're planning to retire. Can you tell me a little bit about that? I mean, are you satisfied? And
I feel great about the decision. I'm going to miss the work. I'm going to miss the people. But it's my wife and I we talked about it. It's time. I've been doing this for 34 years. She's been working the same amount of time. We've got grandkids now. We want to go see what the next phase of life brings us. Kind of excited about it, a little nervous about it too, a little tentative, but feel great about the decision. At the sheriff's office, as far as public safety goes, we've had a succession plan in place since I was the undersheriff. We've been trying to train up all of our young lieutenants and the captains. We've had them involved in the decision-making process at the sheriff's office. They know what's going on in the sheriff's office. It should be a seamless transition. Plan on staying in the community. There's a couple of things that I'd like to be more involved with the community. I'm gonna come to board meetings and
there you go.
Scream and yell at you.
Yeah, come and yell at us. And, tell us how things were.
Since you will now be my supervisor. Well, you've always been my supervisor, but the only thing I've ever wanted to be since I was 3 years old is be a cop, and boy, I'm not going to be that anymore. And it's a little unnerving. Yeah. But I'm excited for it.
Yeah. Well, Sheriff Bill Pooley, thank you so much for coming to talk with us today.
Hey, thanks, man.
Really appreciate it. And good luck to you on your next phase, and please come back and talk to us again.
Right on.
So, all right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Bill.
All right. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Please join us again next week. We're going to have a great conversation with another wonderful member of our community. Take care.